Well, good evening, everybody. Hopefully, you can hear me. Veg, I know you're out there. If you could just tell me whether you hear me clearly or not, I'd appreciate it. And while you do that, Veg, I just wanted to mention I saw your video today about the enshittification of everything, and I think that's appropriate. Enshittification. I do like that word. All right, we have Franz here. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Fantastic. We're good. All right, good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. I always have to check the audio because you just never know what's going to happen with the audio. In any case, it is September the 9th. It's a little bit after 9 from Bridgeton, New Jersey via Arlington, Virginia. And tonight, of course, I'm with my co-host and good friend, that is David Price. Dave, how's everything going with you?
Well, I don't know. Did you get a chance today to cheer Mr. Trump at the Iowa game? Did you see he did make an appearance there? Went to a fraternity and threw some footballs at them, apparently. So I don't know if they were Trump. Trump had his face on the footballs or what kind of thing. Didn't see him passing, so I don't know what kind of arm he has. But of course, Iowa will be the focus state because that's where it all begins, right? Although in the past, Trump hasn't really focused on Iowa. So we'll see how that works out because of course, they have a kind of a relatively strange caucus kind of system. You know, it's small group voting and not really anything in terms of to get a feeling of ballot. But Iowa, of course, is a Republican state. So at this point, Trump is leading the polls in Iowa, as he is across the country for the Republican nomination. So I guess he made an appearance. Governor DeSantis was there. A couple of the more minor candidates were there. But Iowa's a state, that we'll be looking at between now and 2024 because it's number one in terms of when it votes.
Right. Well, did you get any feel for the reaction when Trump was there?
It was very supportive.
Oh, really?
Sure. There was some, apparently, there was some, I think somebody walked through the crowd with a Dr. Fauci costume on and, a couple, but for the most part, it was at Iowa State, which is a conservative university for the most part. So not unexpected. And Donald Trump is Donald Trump.
Right.
Either loved or hated. Very few people have no opinion of him, but it wouldn't surprise me. He would get a positive reaction at that particular university. Now, if he came, say, here to D.C. and was at Howard University, that would be a whole different story.
Right.
But I was Republican, has always been. Don't see it changing anytime soon. And of course, DeSantis at one point was doing relatively well there, and his numbers are down, and Trump's continue to rise. And I guess if anything, that just proves that doesn't matter what they say about you, just keep your name in the media, and that's all that's really important, at least for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Well, today there was, I think this may be the rally. I am not sure, but I want to show our folks something, Dave, and maybe this is from that particular rally. I'm going to see if I can blow this up just a little bit. Kind of peculiar too, so that's not going to work.
It looks like if I saw that, Brian, it did look like it said South Dakota on there, which he did speak at. I think it's probably from South Dakota.
All right, it just, and I know it's kind of a bit of a small screen there, but you just watch him in this. I'll put this up. I'll hopefully everybody will hear the video. Dave, if you can't hear the video, just tell me, okay?
Will do.
And help build America into the greatest nation in the history of the world.
So watch what happens here.
And help build a.
Now, do you read anything into that, Dave?
Yeah, two things. First of all, he says, build it into the greatest nation in the world. Of course, you're going to get cheers for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's no surprise. And secondly, it's Donald Trump. And
But I'm saying,
Brian,
after he gave, a few lines there, he just kind of, the music came in, and he just looked back and forth for about a half a minute, 45 seconds.
well, I don't know, Brian. One of the things that I don't cover as a reporter anymore, but I did have occasion to be at one Trump campaign rally when Judy and I were living in Atlanta, and music, of course, is very important to campaign rallies now. It's show. It's not even what they say. So, why would he talk? I mean, I don't read anything into it. He didn't talk over the video. Didn't talk over the audio. Why would he?
Mm-hmm. No, I just found it kind of strange that it went on that long. And on Twitter, there was a mention that, was there something
Are you
that
looking?
looked confused?
Are you looking for some kind of Mitch McConnell episode?
Yeah, right. I mean, that was what I was kind of alluding to.
No. I mean, I don't see that big
Unless he just seems like he thinks he's Julius Caesar and he wants to hear.
Well, of course he does. Why wouldn't he want to? I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, the man's a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what that does for him,
Mm-hmm.
standing up there, and just bathing in the accolades of, well, we would call them his cult members. He would call them his supporters. The longer this thing goes, and we've got a long way to November of 2024, the more concerned I get about Donald Trump being the next president of the United States.
Right.
You look at, I don't know if you saw, there's all kinds of poll numbers coming out, of course, everywhere. But nothing shows Biden crushing him. Some polls show Trump leading Biden. There was one this week was supposedly people who hadn't made up their mind or were independent. And that showed, actually, that poll, which I think was ABC, showed in that category, Trump had about a 13-point advantage. We have to prepare ourselves. We have to do everything we can to stop it. But at the same time, if I were forced to bet, I don't know if I'd bet against Donald Trump. I mean, I would just because I want him to lose. But what I'm saying is, he's a viable candidate. He's extremely viable.
Right, but how much of that
go ahead.
threat that you talk about of him winning, because you know where I come from on this, how much of that foreboding feeling comes from the idea that there will be some type of chicanery at the state level to try to...
Brian, you keep saying that, and it's true. It would be. At this point, the numbers he doesn't need chicanery.
You think he can go straight through to a win?
If you look at, if the polls are accurate right now, yeah, he doesn't need Now, will he do chicanery? Yes. The problem becomes, where does chicanery come into play? And we're going to keep beating this thing, the drum, if you will, because I think it's important.
Wisconsin,
Brian,
of course.
Of course, Brian, what happens is it's not an American election, okay? In this sense. With the Electoral College, there's only certain states in play, right? There's no way at all I could see where Washington, Oregon, and California, and then the coastal on the West Coast, and then Maine through New Jersey, Delaware, through Delaware at least, if not Maryland, would cast their votes for the Democrats. They will cast their votes for the Democrats. They will not. There's no chance of any Republican winning in those states. So it really doesn't matter what happens there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then you've got the Deep South and the strong Midwest areas that are Republican. Nothing's going to change that. So, we keep naming the states, but I think it's important to continue to name them. The election will be decided in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan,
Wisconsin, right?
Wisconsin, Minnesota, in Tier 1, okay? In Tier 2, I would put Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, and Colorado, and Arizona. That's where the election's going to be, and I don't see that changing between now and then. Now, what I do find interesting, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this tonight again, I'm going to keep my eye on this. I think it's a very important development. How it'll play out, I don't know, is the 14th Amendment. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with that, the 14th Amendment basically specifies that no person can hold office if they engaged in insurrection or rebellion or had called for the same. So, of course, that brings us to January 6th. And the question becomes, did Donald Trump engage in insurrection or rebellion or call for it? From what I view and what I saw and what I remember from January 6th, I think you could make a strong case that he was involved in a rebellion insurrection. If you assume, which I think only logically you can, is that was insurrection, attempted insurrection and rebellion, the takeover of the Capitol. The problem becomes, Brian, is that hasn't been necessarily established yet legally. And so it's a wide open question. This week, I guess it was Wednesday or Thursday, fourth state jumped into that. Colorado, 6 citizens of Colorado made petition in the state court to not allow Donald Trump to be on the ballot in the state of Colorado. Now, the makeup, they're going to be careful with the makeup of these things. It was actually 4 Republicans and 2 independents who joined for the suit. And it's actually calling for the head legal officer, the state attorney general, to remove Trump or not allow Trump to be on the ballot. Now, Brian, how does that, now, they join now, there's a movement in New Hampshire, Arizona, and Michigan. Now, notice, of those states, the only one that's going to go Democratic is New Hampshire.
You think New Hampshire? I mean, it's kind of close, isn't it?
Nah, it's close, but I do think at the end of the day, they will go Democrat. So you've got Arizona and Michigan and Colorado, all of whom are in play. So Donald Trump, he'd need to be on the ballot, I would think, there. Now, it's kind of inconceivable to think about this, but I guess it's time to start thinking about it. What if he is off the ballot in 4 or 5 states? 2 states, even 1 state? With his persecution and victim complex, that he's going to ride that thing. And again, as we do every time, every show,
right,
we have to talk about the Supreme Court. There was no way that this would not end up in the Supreme Court. Right. Absolutely no. It would be impossible not to. Now, this week, Trump and his attorneys are angling for everything they can get. So as soon as the Colorado request was filed, they moved to have it moved to federal court. But at this point, it appears that Colorado is not going to do that, saying that this is a state matter, not a federal matter, which is interesting because you have the President of the United States who's a federal officer, right? But then you have this state saying, we believe, or if it's found that way, this group of the state in Colorado, we believe that it shouldn't be on the ballot. And I think the way the 14th Amendment reads, he shouldn't be on the ballot. However, it has to be established that he, as I said, the big thing is, either was in an insurrection or rebellion or called for the same. Now, of course, with Trump, he's not going to sit back and just idly take this. So here's a quote from him And look how this plays out politically for his supporters. Trump said, talking about Colorado, this is a banana republic. And what they're doing, it's called election interference. Now, the 14th Amendment is just a continuation of that. The 14th Amendment is a continuation of election interference. That's the Constitution of the United States, Donald. That's the law.
But all he has to do is just promote that idea. And now we've got to change in what it means.
That's a key. I mean, Donald Trump is a lot of things. But he is a good promoter of Donald Trump. I mean, how could anybody that heinous have risen to be president of the United States?
How can a party be that heinous? I would think it's just obviously. Well, you agree with me, but it's the whole party has decided to become evil.
Well, they decided to become evil.
Lying is good.
Over a whole period of time. I mean, we said it before. This didn't happen overnight with Donald Trump. It was a long, long process. I would say it started probably in the 50s with Joe McCarthy, right?
Right.
And then you pick up
that the tonality of what happened in the 50s is here.
Right. Except now it's not some, and it's, I mean, I'm not saying that this is true. Senator McCarthy had a horrible drinking problem, which contributed to his early death. But instead of just a drunken senator now, it's the president of the United States. Again, I sit here every week. I sit here whenever I think about it during the day. We're not on the air. I don't understand how anybody can support Donald Trump. But Brian, and more people are supporting him today than did.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up McCarthy because of course, you were like a child when that happened.
Right.
And I wasn't even born. But it's my understanding, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, is that during that period, Dave, and it was, I guess, was it Eisenhower who was president at the time?
Yes, Dwight Eisenhower.
I don't want to say he was intimidated, but he seemed to keep his hands off the situation.
Yeah, he did at that point.
Even he seemed to be afraid.
Until they took on the military. Because you got to remember, Eisenhower was not a politician. He was a general and in the military. So, I think there's been some indications that he just thought McCarthy was just some low-level vermin that would destroy himself. And actually, it was a moment when the news, led by Edward R. Murrow and some others, rose to the occasion and attacked him. And they began, it's like so often happens with McCarthy in particular. He had some initial success. I wish I could remember the number. I want to say it's 217, but that might be wrong. He actually had a blank piece of paper that he held out, and he would say to people, think about this as Trumpian, right?
Right.
I have here whatever the number was. I'm going to say 217. I'm not sure. I forget what it was. I have here 217 names who are communists in the government. It was a blank piece of paper.
Right.
And so certainly that does to me sound Trumpian.
But it was effective, Dave, for a while.
Oh.
For a number of years. We had 3 years of it. And as you said, Edward R. Murrow and a few others started fighting back. It's when they started fighting back. However, in this situation, when we have a Republican Party that is, as we've said, completely intransigent and willing to do nefarious acts to achieve a goal, we have had the pushback. But the problem now is it seems as though in the courts and in the Congress, there's so much support that he's a different beast than McCarthy.
Well,
because he was president,
well, that part's true. Or is it that the Republican Party is different? Let's see what Gary has to say. Okay,
So basically, saying is the polls may not be as true as one would think.
Well, and again, certainly, that's all. That's all we have is the polls on one hand, and then what we see personally, how we view it personally. Gary mentions a doctor friend who has gone away. But I know of far more Republicans who are still supporting them in my personal circle than not. That's all. And again, how far have we come, Brian, really from the Red Scare of the McCarthy era? And actually, it was a second scare going on.
And right, the second, because we go back to A. Mitchell Palmer with the Palmer raids. Right. Really no different. It was just a smaller circle of people that he had to go against.
And of course, in the McCarthy era, they talk about the Red Scare, which was Cold War, etc., Russia. But one that isn't talked about as much and was related to it and linked to it in a way was the Lavender Scare. Are you familiar with that at all?
The Lavender Scare? You'll have to refresh my memory, Dave.
You probably don't even know about it. Most people don't.
I think you might have mentioned this before, though.
I have, yeah, because it's in context. Is the fact that the Lavender Scare was the idea that homosexuality was rampant in Washington, D.C. government. And how it tied into the Red Scare is, because remember, this is a different time, homosexuals basically having to hide, certainly being disqualified from anything. And they thought that would lead to communists blackmailing gay men and women. And of course, as Marty points out, which is absolutely, I find, not just somewhat ironic, Roy Cohn was as much a father figure, probably more of a father figure to Donald Trump than Donald Trump's own father.
Right.
And Cohn was the mouthpiece for...
and that just shows you, Dave, how big the past is. And it's anybody who says that the past doesn't matter, it does matter, because Roy Cohn is well, I should say Donald Trump is an extension of Roy Cohn's philosophy now.
And let's tie it really in now with this, back to this Colorado thing that we started with. Here's another quote from Donald Trump. He calls it a trick being used by three groups: the radical left, the radical left communists, the Marxists, and fascists.
Right.
Now, I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't really think communists and fascists, if anything, they're opposites.
Absolutely.
But
that doesn't matter with his.
I know that. With his,
they're just words
they're just words.
Ring a bell.
And they drive fear into people, just as it did in McCarthy's time, just as it did in the Palmer raids time. Mm-hmm. The difference, as you pointed out earlier, Brian, is this is a man who was president of the United States and who may well be president again.
Dave, on that, I want to take a half a minute here. Just that you're familiar with Kristi Noem from South Dakota. Just what you were talking about. I want to put her on for half a minute because this relates exactly to what you're saying. Disguised.
Need to heed this warning in this well-known quote. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So listen, do something. Get in the arena. History cannot and it should not be rewritten.
Okay, that's enough for me.
Whoa. What party wants to completely rewrite history? Come on, Kristi, get it. And of course, that sounds great. There are words that really smack of the civil rights period, right? When to do something was to speak out against Jim Crow, when to speak out or join with Dr. King and the people trying to bring rights to African Americans, not some South Dakota governor who had, using actually perversion of words. I mean, it's true, okay? But of course, the difference is the fact that I think it's a bastardization of the use of the words because of the people that she's directed into. I don't want those people to do anything because whatever they do is going to not be good for me. And Franz, you're absolutely right. Nothing matters to these dumbasses. They made up their mind. And the question becomes, Brian, how many dumbasses are there in the United States? And you said before about the Republican Party. I think the Republican Party simply wants to win. And I say this again. if I were a Republican, and I'm not, and I didn't really have the moral backbone that maybe a Liz Cheney finally demonstrated that she had, or Michael Steele, or others who were, high ranking in the Republican Party and now are never Trumpers. I like that Donald Trump got me. He got me a Supreme Court for 30 years. Why wouldn't I want him back in office? If I didn't, what if I really did think, as some of these do, that America's headed down a wrong trail? A little bit later on, I want to come back to one of my topics that I like to discuss, book banning. And there, I think you will see, where we're headed is not a good place for America. I think that's what we take from this. Now, put up again. You had Biden up there, and
yeah, sure.
Let
me bring that up. Oh, for Christ's sake! Okay, here we go, and boom. All right, so they're just basically giving a warning that you were talking about, that
right.
That they say something roughly. They're saying that there's this group of people, not a great percentage, but enough who are ambivalent to either candidate could change the election. And it's hard to believe that there are people like that, but there are people like that.
Well, and also that's our first look tonight at President Biden. This picture there, and of course, today, if the election were today, it's Trump Biden. That's clear. If it were today, a lot of things can happen between now and 2024. But President Biden, his numbers are historically low. And he can't get over 40%. And at this point, there's some people, and I guess now would be a good time to talk about one who may cut into his votes, right? We've already talked on the show about Robert Kennedy,
right?
Who is as delusional as Donald Trump. He is. He's just, he's an anti-vaxxer. He's got some crazy, crazy ideas. But another gentleman who I think does pose a threat to any of the whatever Democrat runs, but now we're looking at Biden, and that would be Cornel West.
Okay.
Who is going to run for the Green Party. Now, you have you've been involved with a lot of organizations and groups that are environmentally
correct,
conscious, trying to do that. And the Green Party is the party of the environment. Would you agree?
Absolutely. At least ostensibly, because we know what happened with Kirsten Sinema. Okay. So
right. And that's the thing. Now, do you really think Cornel West, I think his issue would be...
he just doesn't come off as the Green Party, unless he wears something green other than that, or likes money.
Because, he's spoken, it's like, that's what get me here, but I'm really going to talk about. A couple of his issues are mass incarceration, which, of course, we can look at American statistics, and we imprison more people than any other country in the world. And the majority of them are minorities. And the number one minority incarcerated, African Americans and the African American males. If Mr. West runs, which he says he's going to do, okay, he already has a problem. I see it, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Just this week, it was reported that he owes $446,000 in federal income taxes from 2013 to 2017. He previously owed $725,000 in back taxes from 1998 to 2003.
He's supposed to be an honest, religious man of God.
Well, I guess, maybe he didn't want to give in to Caesar, which was Caesar's, if he's going to claim that. There comes a point when you kind of have to face the fact politics is a dirty business. It really is. And because I mean, look, you've got Clarence Thomas, you got the Supreme Court tied up, you've got questions of ethics in the House, questions of ethics in the Senate. Now you've got certainly questions of ethics with the Republican, the supposed. Yes, he is still teaching. So I forget the school. It's not a major school. It's not like Harvard or Yale. But yeah, he's still teaching. So, the question becomes, should someone who owes $446,000 in federal income tax be president of the United States? Well, you know who has to decide that? The voters. Should a person, who's been involved in insurrection rebellion, which I believe Donald Trump has, should he be president of the United States? Now, I suppose and where, of course, this comes into play, whether it's Cornel West, whether it's Robert Kennedy, whether it's Marianne Williamson, she may well run again as an independent or on the Democratic side. There are people who vote for them, right?
Right.
And a vote for them is not really, they probably wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. I mean, I'd find it hard to believe that someone who would support Mr. West would support Mr. Trump.
Right.
So any votes taken will be taken from the Democratic nominee. Now, something, again, like Gary talked about the doc earlier, or posted about the doctor that he knows who's not a Trumper anymore. I had a little different experience. I had a friend here who's certainly has understanding of politics. He spent his life, he's now 84, but he spent his working life either being a reporter or working on Capitol Hill. He went back and forth, which is commonplace in Washington to do. We were talking this week, I had a long talk really about politics, and he is very concerned and believes he's almost becoming an anybody but Biden person.
By the way, Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that sound?
That could well be. I don't know. Well, certainly that didn't hurt. Donald was only in wife 3 or whatever, and that's that's another thing though, and I'm okay with that. I mean, people have a right to marry and divorce and do whatever they want to do.
Well, it's just the fact that he is a quote unquote man of God, and then we know, you and I know what happens, but
that's where the problem comes. If you do that, that's really as I say, that's where the problem arises.
That's 5 in a row. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want that up to bat.
Right. Back to this conversation I had with my friend Ralph. I say very politically astute, and but he also said something. I found this. He says, I don't have the mental acumen to be president, and he's right around the same age as Joe Biden. So he's also basing it on that. But I maintained that for Democrats, if you don't want Donald Trump, then you got to vote for whoever has a chance to beat Donald Trump. And right now, that's whoever the Democratic candidate is for.
And don't you think that's
president.
What will happen?
I don't know, Brian.
I think that will happen. Again, my fear is something different.
But not could somebody like Cornel West in the Green Party, could they take enough votes from Biden to cost him Pennsylvania or Michigan or Minnesota or Wisconsin?
Right.
He's also a black candidate, which gives him certain advantages, I assume, with the African American community, and the Democrat, they'll need strong support. I mean, take Georgia for example. Like I said, it may be a foregone conclusion you can't win in Georgia, but you certainly can't win in Georgia unless 99%
of the African American vote comes out and votes for Biden.
I missed what Silly Wonka's not okay.
Well, I'm seeing the thread here. They're talking about the 5th wife, and then all of a sudden this came up. I guess the 5 wives. I guess because of his. I'm guessing. Silly, you can add a few comments there if you'd like to clarify that, be more explicit.
Now, just before I finish with Mr. West, here's what he said, Brian. when that came out this week about his taxes. See if this reminds you of anyone. Anytime you show a flashlight under somebody's clothes, you're going to find all kinds of mess, because that's what it is to be human. Now, what do you mean? I don't know if anybody personally has $446,000 in back taxes that I know. The only way to take that. Hey, Paul, thanks for stopping by. What he's basically saying is, it's okay because everybody's like me, right? Because, it says flashlight under somebody's clothes, you're going to find all kinds of mess, because that is what it is to be human. I don't think that is what it's to be human, to owe back taxes. I think, it doesn't make you, I don't see how it qualifies you. So at this point, I think we're kind of in conflict, as we often are now, with the ideals of America. Anybody has a right to run for president that's qualified, right? But the problem becomes they're going to take votes from somebody else, unless there are people who would only vote, Green Party no matter what. In other words, they want to sit it out. But even there, depending on where the state is, it can also be $1 million, yeah. Cholos. I mean, people owe back taxes. I'm certainly not naive enough not to know that. But I think that owing back taxes to that amount says something about your ability to be president. Much more than Hunter Biden's gun speaks to Joe Biden's ability to be president or not. I don't find that, again, I've spoken on that before. I think it's really hard for the sins of the son to be visited on the father. Normally it's the sins of the father to be visited on the son. But, and especially, but however, I do think that now that the plea deal or plea agreement with Hunter on the gun and the tax evasion charges, it's going to be tough. Biden has a number of negatives in people's minds. I think age is up there. This uncertainty, it didn't take much. Hillary's emails, right? By Hunter Biden's computer. People are convinced that, there's all kinds of stuff on there. There's not, if there is, we haven't seen it yet. But it's there. It's being talked about. Well, let me ask you, Brian, speaking as either as yourself or as everybody, do you think Joe Biden is more electable in 2024 than he was in 2020? Or do you think he's more electable in 2020?
It's a great question. It's just going to be my speculation, my intuition. My intuition tells me it's exactly the same. I think that you have two opposing parties. They're just light years away from each other. We fear a complete change in American politics, in American government. We fear fascism. They know they're on a roll. They're going to play their game their way, just like you saw with Kristi Noem and Trump and the rest. I just see it going exactly the same way. The question is, how far will the Republicans go between now and November of 24? I can't see it being any different. This is like, a rematch of boxers, or, two teams that are, equally talented or not talented, and you kind of have the same result. I can't see anything being different.
That's what a lot of political pundits are looking at, the negative numbers on Trump and the negative numbers on Biden. It's almost like definitely setting up kind of, in some people's mind, a lesser of two evils. Now, I don't find it that way. I think that every Democrat who holds breath right now is better than Donald Trump. That's just, don't see anything, and I don't see anything out there that would actually change my mind. Put that up again, do you guys?
Sure.
It was just up there. Let's look at this. Do you guys think Biden would win a rematch against Trump, assuming Trump gets the Republican nomination? Well, Paul, I've been saying that. I have my doubts that Biden would win a second time. Again, we have to qualify it. Long way between 2024 and now. Let's assume for a moment that he is removed, that Trump is removed from some state ballots. That changes the complexion, right? Does if he is convicted of insurrection or fomenting rebellion, which he's been indicted for, would that change? I don't think it would change. I don't think it would change people's minds. But if there was a legal ruling that he couldn't run or didn't run in some states, that could definitely change it. You're not alone, Paul. I think that's part of everybody's kind of fear. But Brian, let's change it a little bit around. Do you have somebody, if it weren't Joe Biden, if for whatever reason, do you have somebody you think is the strongest candidate to emerge on the Democratic side?
Well, I can tell you what the person whom I think is the best candidate, but not the strongest candidate. I think the best candidate is somebody whom I could trust. It's somebody who knows what he's talking about or she's talking about, and that would be Sheldon Whitehouse. But he's from Rhode Island. He doesn't have the name, and he can't win. The second strongest candidate, in my opinion, I would have to say, Bernie because of name recognition.
But
Bernie would,
right.
Bernie would get a lot of votes from a group of people who wouldn't normally vote for Biden, but we'd also lose some votes from conservative Democrats, Biden Democrats. I don't think right now there's anyone, Dave, in the Democratic Party, and I include Bernie Sanders, that's any more striking than Biden right now. I mean, who is out there? You can say, "Oh my God!" I mean, maybe Gavin Newsom has a name, and maybe he's looks better than other people. But
is Gavin? You know, I think I kind of equate Gavin Newsom to is Beto O'Rourke. You know, we got to see if he's
I love Beto O'Rourke. I think he's much better than Biden.
But he couldn't win. You know, I'm just saying. I mean, so right now,
he better win his own state. I mean, if you can't win your own state, that's a problem to begin with. We've learned that with Gore.
Yeah, and again, you can't look back, but it would have been interesting. Had it been Hillary before Barack, I mean, it wasn't. So it's like talking about
right.
If there were mermaids or whatever, but suddenly now, Joe Biden.
Do you think that's the case? Pretty much.
I think, Bella. I think. Well, yes. I think the DNC does not want that. You never want. I mean, you don't want to. I mean, what does that say? Think about it. What does that say?
Well, we know Jim Clyburn thought that. I mean, that was basically the African American wing of the Democratic Party that saved Biden. They were the ones who said, we're not going to let Bernie win. But you need the African American vote, but they're a little more conservative.
It would depend on how much pressure they could put on, or again, the name that we don't bring up is Kamala, right?
Right.
By political thinking, if it's not Joe Biden, she would seemingly be
the only way she becomes president if he dies in office. Other than that,
yeah. And then the question becomes, and we're supposed to be kind of we're not the reality report, your old environmental show, but we try to deal with reality here. And the reality question would be, could she win, being a woman and African American, and with some of the baggage that she has attached to her? Again, would people care?
Well, wouldn't it come down to that article we were just briefly looking at, Dave, where the 20 to 29% who oddly enough, are ambivalent. You know, I don't even know how you can have a profile of those type of people, but for whatever reason, they can't decide. Kamala Harris, is she the person for whom they could vote? I don't know that. I just don't know. But she needs to get at least half of those voters, because right now it looks like, I mean, the problem is the white vote, the male white vote, still generally votes Republican, and that's because they're racist and they're from the South mainly, and I don't know what else to say.
Or they view themselves as religions, and they view the Democrats as godless. You know, because if you looked at that,
Sorry.
that's okay. Pristine. That's
Okay.
good, Anthony. Keep that around. I mean, it's kind of like most of the names. We it's interesting. We talk about this as age being. Donald Trump is not a young man, right? Joe
He's going
Biden's
to be
not a young man.
78. Joe Biden's going to be, what, 82?
Mitch McConnell is not a young man. Certainly, Dianne Feinstein is not a young woman. Nancy Pelosi announced this week that she will run again, not for necessarily for run for the state, not
Well,
necessarily.
Barack Obama was not an old person. He was dynamic. He was African American. Then maybe that's where you have to look, because otherwise it doesn't seem like. Look, you had Gavin Newsom, and you've had Beto O'Rourke, and Beto couldn't even win Texas, and then you have Gavin Newsom. Who knows? I don't know, Dave. I mean, you would normally think we need like a John Kennedy type, but I think you need an African American John Kennedy type. Is it Hakeem
Okay,
Jeffries?
no, it's not Hakeem Jeffries.
I don't know. I don't see it yet. And
Yeah, I mean Obama, and it's hard because he won, and he was there. I'm trying to think, really that. Okay, so how did Obama overcome the idea of race? I mean, that's what we'd have to look at. Is there some formula that you could put?
you're not going to like what I'm going to say, but I think, and this is really, I don't know if it's poor thinking or it's just the intuition. I think it had to do with his looks. I think that he didn't come across like, if you had the same person as Obama, but he looked like, I don't know,
Are you going to go? Don't tell me you're going to go with the light skin.
Clarence Thomas, he wouldn't have won, because every candidate that looks like Alan West or Clarence Thomas, they get buried. But I think they will accept. I'm talking about the people who are in between, not you and me,
I
but
understand.
those type of people. For some reason, I know it sounds absurd, but I think looks play a part in it.
Well, let's just look at this. It's not going to happen because, of course, you can't do it. But could Barack Obama beat Donald Trump?
Absolutely,
You believe that?
absolutely.
Okay. Could it's not going to happen, but could Michelle Obama beat Donald Trump? Now that's not going to
I
happen.
don't know
That's,
that.
I mean, again, so would she be more viable than Miss Harris? I mean, yep, Al Gore, yeah, Joey, that's true. Romney lost Massachusetts, where he was governor. Trump lost my state twice.
AOC. Okay, that's a good question.
No, Veg, and I'll tell you why. I think IOC's like, I think she is, if there is such a thing, she's too honest. Again, female, young. I think she's very effective as a legislator. However, Brian, there's something. Have you heard about anything from her recently?
I've seen a few Twitter posts
But
from
not,
her.
not. She hasn't become the. There for a while, she was the Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you will, the good Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? Everything was coming to her, was directed at her, and now I think it's they found out that more effective to direct it to Biden. And here's another thing. Judy, my wife Judy, was reading something, and she got all upset about it. She said it was an attack of Biden on gas prices. Well, the question becomes, what impact does the president have really on setting gas prices? Has some, or hopefully someday she will have some, but they get blamed for that. I mean, it's still going to be pocketbook issues, right? Let me rephrase that. I think with non-political people, it's pocketbook issues. Does that make sense? In other words, if you're a Democrat, you're going to vote Democrat. If you're Republican, you vote Republican. If you're a Trump cultist, you're going to vote Trump. But
you're talking about the economic voters. It's the economy stupid, right. And I think you've got a point, because this is where, as you mentioned, how people in the Republican Party are working together, and it is not only the fact that these governors are, and the senators, well, generally the governors and the congressional groups from the Republican Party, but also international influence, where you have people like Vladimir Putin and Mohammed bin Salman cutting the supply of oil, increasing the price, and they're willing to receive less right now, and Russia needs, their energy imports.
Right.
They're willing to hurt themselves in the short run, because they feel in the long run, you put Donald Trump in as president again, they're going to get what they want. I mean, Putin will get all of Ukraine and perhaps more, and bin Salman will be able to, take the chainsaw to anybody he likes. So he's got everybody on his team who's evil, and it's not even, within the borders of the United States. It's a great fear of mine.
Well, I think it should be. I think it should be a fear of all of ours. And
because I have no doubt in mind, and this is what I say: if the economy goes down, the only way it goes down almost directly is because the price of oil will go up, which means the price of gasoline, because that's really the heart of the matter. For it's the economy stupid. They're going to look at gasoline because that price infiltrates transportation, and then transportation gets into the product itself, and then all prices rise. And it's going to happen for the next month, year and a half, if they keep doing this.
And another thing, thinking about the Democratic Party now, I've said before, it's very varied and has all these little, elements in it, in terms of groups that want. I mean, I would assume if you're going to name the party of African Americans, it would be the Democrats, right? I mean,
correct.
That makes sense. If you're going to name the party of women, if abortion is one of the key women's, it's the Democratic Party. If you're going to name the party supporting LGBTQ plus people, it would be the Democratic Party. If you're looking at who supports the idea of college loan relief, it would be the Democratic Party. Yeah, well, Sully, again, certainly it would have a Kennedy. Kennedy would have a great name recognition family, but he is nuts. Okay, so that's my only feeling about Kennedy. I hope he doesn't draw any votes from Joe Biden, and I don't think Kennedy would run as an independent. I can't swear to that. And you've got Pelosi. That's another thing. We've talked about that before, Silly, on this show. On one hand, people are living longer, right, than ever before in history. But also what's happening is our government is skewering way older than the general populace. And that's interesting. If Donald gets in, we're stuck with him until he dies.
Yes.
Certainly he would like that. Now the question becomes, how do you go about changing the Constitution? Do you do it with fiat? You said before, Brian, who controls the military?
Right.
I would hope, naive though it may be, but from my dealings with military people down here, because I live, 2 miles from the Pentagon, so a lot of military presence here. I would hope that they would, support the Constitution and not the president, even though the president is the head. And that, you see that in novels, you see that in different things. Um,
Well, with Paul's point here about
and
inflation, a lot of the, well, first of all, if we want to talk about food prices, there still is a component to transportation in that. So that's part of it. There's also, the climate has a great influence on the price of food, also the time of year. Um, and then, of course, outside that of food, you have inflation simply created by corporations who are trying to basically rape the consumer and receive windfall profits. There's no reason for the price of an automobile to go up 25% if the inflation rate is 3%. So somebody's skimming. And this is the problem with our current state of capitalism. They're going to do it. So, and the common voter, the voter Dave's talking about, is not going to be able to parse the nuance between prices and inflation. They don't understand that. They only understand, look at the gas station, it's now $4.50 instead of $3.99. Then once you hit $5, you know.
and of course, with Paul's idea of the food prices, I do think probably if I and I don't move in wide social circles, but there I've heard more people actually concerned about the price of groceries than I have definitely gas prices. I think gas prices play better in the media. For,
I'm just saying there's a connection,
oh, absolutely,
but
absolutely.
they don't readily understand that connection. I would agree that they're looking at the food prices because they're going to the grocery store every 3 days.
And it's
Gasoline
kind of
might be different.
kind of unreal. Name me something. Uh, well, let's look at meat, whether it's white meat, chicken, or steak, or ground chuck, or whatever. Uh, there's no such thing as cheap. I mean, look at scallops. Look at what I mean. There's nothing you can get that's cheap unless you get Hot Pockets, and then you get then your health goes down because you're eating junk food. Um,
But I was want to put up.
Yeah, that was a point. Yeah, and I think that's a point. Well, the last thing I want to talk about tonight, because our time is going away here, is something that is not necessarily directly political, but it is. And of course, maybe this is the literature teacher in me, or the English teacher in me, or the book lover in me, is book banning.
Okay.
We've talked about it a lot on the show. There's no question. This week they released a report from the American Library Association, and in 2022, a year ago, we reached a record for book banning in the country.
Mm-hmm.
There were 1,050 requests to censor library books in the United States of America. That number was a 70% increase because in 2021 there was 619. Book banning is bad. Okay. The main reason is because, one of our founding precepts is freedom of speech, and freedom of speech also implies freedom to read what you want. I think, to me, book banning is even worse than some limitations on freedom of speech, simply because, book banning, nobody should, well, I shouldn't say that. They're the same. They're the same. It's an attack on free speech. Now, one of the differences that ALA pointed out this time, it used to be that a parent would find a book offensive and would ask the school or the library to remove that book from the shelves. But that's not what's happening now. What's happening is there are actually organized groups doing it. We saw that in Virginia. You're seeing it now, a group I've mentioned on this show, and somebody we really got to look at after, Moms for Liberty. I can't think of anything other than 1984 War's Peace and, love is hate, or hate is love. And liberty is not what they're about. They're about restricting liberty. It should be Moms for Restricting Liberty. Just a couple other things I just found interesting, and for no reason. let's see how good you are, Brian. Just playing as every person again. There were book challenges in 2022 in 48 of the 50 states. Any guess which two states did not have? I wouldn't have gotten this question in a
Did
million
not
years.
have a book banning?
Two states, yep.
Did not have book banning.
Only two states. There were no requests to ban books.
Well, again, this is intuition. I would probably, geez, Massachusetts, New Jersey, or New York. One of those three.
They
Gotta
would
be
be
in it.
logical. They're not. The two states are Nevada and Delaware. What they share in common, I don't know. One's relatively large, but few people. One's small. Maybe one's Nevada is kind of a swing state, if you will, sometimes given toward republicanism. Delaware, of course, is firmly in the Democratic camp. Now let's see if you can get this one, Brian.
Okay.
I might have gotten this one. I don't know. It's between two states. What do you think was the number one state for book ban requests?
I would have to say Florida.
That would be the number two. Number one was Texas.
Well, now I can understand Texas because that's where the textbooks are made. So they decide, right there you go.
Yeah.
I should have remembered that.
No.
Damn
The two states, one, that kind of determine what textbooks are written are California and Texas. Why?
Texas, right.
So many people.
And oddly enough, as you've said this before, is that even with companies like Cengage or Southwestern, the textbooks that they create, even in Texas, will be different,
Correct.
Slightly different. Look at the science textbooks, especially in New Jersey, than they would get in Texas.
Supporting this is
It just
interesting.
infuriates me.
Again, with Texas, there were 93 requests for bans, right, in 2022. Yeah, maybe. Paul, maybe you're right. 93 requests. But listen to this, Brian. This is why we say groups and coming out. There were 2,349 books challenged in 93 requests. And of course, almost all the books challenged fall into one of two categories, either LGBTQ, positive, in some way discussing that. And the number one book challenged in 2022 was Gender Queer, a memoir.
I feel so badly for those people. It
Of
just
course.
what they must be going through.
Well, yeah.
It's unspeakable.
And of course, that gets to the religious right, and we're back in the da. God doesn't want them, whatever.
Well, it's just the fact that the religious are going to determine. Again, it's one thing if they deal with their own religion on their own, but when you start telling other people what to do and how to live, as we've said before, this is the crisis we have, because they're back at it again. They have grievances that should not be grievances,
And another, probably the book that's on a modern classic list, the most challenged, would be The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And again, so if it's not LGBTQ, it's really people of color. So again, I would urge, if you don't want books banned, you have to look to the Democratic Party, right? I mean, you do.
I mean, it's a no-brainer.
If you're a gay American, you have to look to the Democratic Party. You're certainly not going to get help anywhere else.
But Dave, I would like to go back to the economics. And it's a shame your son's not here, because he could sure pipe in with this. I think most intellectual people have a basic understanding of economics, so they wouldn't automatically blame Biden for the price of oil going up, or they would understand what Saudi Arabia and Russia are trying to do to increase the world price of oil for a barrel of oil. But again, it's that 20%, and somebody alluded to it in the chat earlier during the show, that unfortunately many people are not educated enough to understand any type of nuance. So the Republican Party and people like Frank Luntz, people who, know how to weave words like climate change when we know it's global warming, they can effectively grab those 20% of the people that you're worried about.
Right. And then again, I'm going to close my remarks as I always kind of something I haven't varied from much. There's a certain, Trump has a cult following plus certain Republicans in his camp. There are Democratic states, which we talked about earlier, that are going to elect, they're going to support whomever the Democratic nominee is for president. But what it comes down to is 10 states. And right now, nobody knows how it's going to play out. But I would say this as I leave the show for this week. I think as Americans, we have to be concerned. And I think that's true, even the cultists. If they really believe what they're saying, they have to be concerned too, right? I mean, America's not going in their direction. The question is, I think America has to go in the direction of the Constitution. That's my feeling. If it doesn't, it's not there. Now, some things the founding fathers, couldn't envision some of what we have. One of the things that I point out constantly is the idea of when they said for life, like with Supreme Court justices, they were talking about maybe 5 years, 7 years, tops, in terms of lifespan. Probably, there were some exceptions. Obviously, some people lived longer. And I guess next week I'll talk more about it. But my concern is the Constitution. Is it still as meaningful as it was? And if it isn't, how the hell do we change it? So that's something I'll deal with next week, Brian. So thank you again. Thanks everybody who listened and reviewed it or saw later. And we're going to end the Arlington, Virginia part. And as always, the Bridgeton part can close the show. So talk to you later,
Dave.
Brian.
Great seeing you again. See you next week, Dave. Wow. Very depressing tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But it's the way it goes. I do have a few things I wanted to mention. I don't know where we're going to start. Well, I want to show you a few things that I think are worth showing. David Feldman mentioned metaphorically about Roach Motel. We talked about Roach Motels in general. They have all over the big cities these Roach Motels, with the sticky floors and the roaches all over the place. And what the Republican Party has become, he says, is basically like a Roach Motel. And in a certain sense, I think he's absolutely right. I'm going to show you somebody you all know very well, but I think it's worth looking at. You're going to, obviously you can see here, this is Mike Lindell. Let me see if I can get his back on here. Mike Lindell was deposed in March, but it was only now that I think the attorney who deposed him released the video. Let me cut this out here for a second. I'll move over here. I think it's worth taking a look at because Mike Lindell is a disgusting human being. But there are plenty of people who, I'll get into the street vernacular, dig his shit. So let's take a quick look at Mike Lindell and his meltdown.
A video deposition involving Mike Lindell from one of his many defamation.
Move it ahead.
Basic questions.
Well, good morning, Mr. Lindell. My name is Charlie Kane. We met for the first time
Who's paying you?
About 4 minutes ago. Is that right?
What was the question?
We met for the first time.
Yes.
Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start slow because the court reporter is trying to take down what you're saying, okay?
Don't sit and scold me already, mister. I'll do whatever I have to do. So I don't. You're not. You're just a lawyer. You're an ambulance chasing lawyer. So don't start with me. I got all day. I'll take as much time as you want. So let's go. You're not my boss. You're just a lawyer, frivolous lawyer.
That whole thing started when he asked Mike Lindell his name.
Hopefully you can still hear me. I thought what was interesting about that, we know that he got very, very defensive right off the top. Okay, because he's being deposed, he's under oath. But if you notice his right arm, and then I think we have to just look at the physical aspect of him, the nervousness that goes through this guy, because he is a liar. I don't have to tell anybody that. But watch his body language in this, because you're going to see he sways back and forth, and he can't sit still. So we'll watch this again.
Well, good morning, Mr. Lindell. My name is Charlie Kane. We met for the first time
Who's paying you?
about 4 minutes ago. Is that right?
Is what was the question?
We met for the first time.
Yes.
Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start slow. Because the court report...
Now notice he's wearing his cross there. I think that's kind of obvious what he's trying to do, because he knows that, it's the Trump evangelicals that'll actually believe his shit, just like they'll believe in religion. Not that I want to go against religion tonight, but there is a certain faith factor involved in this.
Reporter's trying to take down what you're saying, okay?
Okay, there's his hands are shaking, so his right hand there.
Don't sit and scold me already, mister. I'll do whatever I have to do. So I don't. You're not. You're just a lawyer.
So he's just twitching all over the place. Now we'll move ahead.
Let's see.
Why'd you call me an ambulance chaser?
What?
Why did you call me an ambulance chaser?
Because you are. This is a frivolous case, and if you're representing this guy and you've read this case, you are a disgusting lawyer. Period. That's my right to say. You want to sue me too, Mr. Ambulance Chaser? No, I can't believe anybody would take this. This is absolutely disgusting. It's a disgrace to our country. It's a disgrace to you. You gonna arrest me? I'll say whatever I want, and if we have extra, that's do that. Don't tell me about my depositions. You're not my boss. You're just some frivolous lawyer in here, and you bring in this frivolous case to me. It's disgusting. I can't believe that you're a lawyer, that you would do something like that. Don't you have a moral compass? How do you guys sleep at night? You obviously don't have a My Pillow. That's a fact. Rotten, horrible lawyers like you and the media saying, oh, Mike Lindell's trying to save this country just to make money. I have lost everything I've had so far. You got it? So don't sit here, because I'm not going to take this garbage you're spewing out. I might just come after you guys for the most frivolous case ever when this is done. If there's a way to sue you, believe me, I'm doing it. Now you're an asshole. You got that? You're an asshole, is what you are.
Okay, so he's out of control. But we have to remember here, this is still a deposition. I mean, there's things that he has to do. And the one thing he really has to do is answer a question. And he can't seem to do it. He just has to throw things back at him. Now, I know that the attorney's putting a lot of pressure on him. I mean, that's part of his job. But he is asking him questions and asking him to answer them. And he comes back with personal attacks. And this is what mainly all the Trumpers have done, starting with Trump. Okay. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, because there are people who really, really believe in... I've known people who believe Mike Lindell. It's hard to believe anybody who sees that. I mean, you all know who Mike Lindell is. I wouldn't buy a pillow from him. But, there are pliable minds out there. And they know they can't win. Like, this is what, for example, Peter Navarro, he was convicted within hours. And he was pulling the same Lindell crap in public. It's the same thing. But when you get to the court, it's a different story. The thing is, they're always hoping to get to the right court. In fact, that reminds me, the appeal for Steve Bannon that he made, because he was convicted of defying a subpoena, October 12th. Okay, but see, part of the problem is that they go through this long appeal process, which of course we've talked about with Trump, where they play this game, so they don't have to actually sit in prison. So Navarro, he's not been sentenced yet, but I assume that it'll follow the same pattern. There'll be this appeal. We go to the 11th Circuit Court, which is generally conservative. They're waiting to find the right court to be able to help them out. And of course, the final court is the one, in the end. I think Dave was alluding to what could happen in the future when we have a very tight election. This will eventually go to the Supreme Court. And that's when all bets are off. Because remember, the Republican Party is essentially a criminal organization right now. That's how I see it. When you have a criminal organization, you can be assured that many of the people whom they have selected have a criminal mentality. For example, Clarence Thomas. Now, he wasn't chosen by Trump, but it doesn't matter. But you have people like Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh. I would worry more about Gorsuch than anybody else. These people are bought. The Aileen Cannons of the world. All right, one last thing I want to show you. I don't know where I sent this broadcast out, by the way. I may have made a mistake and put it on iGeneralist. I have to go through preferences, and I get really, really busy. I was restarting my modem, so I don't know if this is showing on Divided We Stand or not. I do, however, want to show you a clip from Keith Olbermann, and it's about Elon Musk. And this one infuriated, not what he said, I agree 100%. But what Elon Musk has done, he's been helping the Russians by hurting the Ukrainians. Let's check this out.
And also available on YouTube. There's lots on the weekend edition of the Countdown podcast about how John Eastman inadvertently reignited the entire Chuck Grassley Electoral College count controversy of January 6th. But
Okay. I feared as much. I had an echo, folks, with the system audio. So thank you, Joey. I'll put that on again here if you didn't hear that. I'll put that on again. You'll hear it. It's just that I'm hearing a massive echo here. I'm sorry about that, but I had to make the choice.
there's lots on the weekend edition of the Countdown podcast about how John Eastman inadvertently reignited the entire Chuck Grassley Electoral College count controversy of January 6th. But I'd like you to listen instead to the Elon Musk segment because the tipping point is here. Musk is now interfering with American foreign policy. He is now aiding the enemies of this nation, and he's now following the instruction of Russian propagandists. The tipping point is Elon Musk has become a danger to the United States of America. Walter Isaacson's new book reports that in 2022, Musk ordered his engineers in secret to make sure that Starlink was not available to Ukraine. so that a Ukrainian submarine drone attack on the Russian naval fleet would fail. Fail it did, and Ukrainians died. Why did Musk do it? Because Musk was afraid the attack would be viewed as a, quote, mini Pearl Harbor and provoke a Russian nuclear response. And he did it also after Ian Miles Chong, who has worked for RT, the Russian propaganda network, suggested it to him on Twitter. The kindest interpretation is that Elon Musk is now under the influence of Russia. And this nation must, if possible, deport him. All that.
Right. So I consider that to be a very, very big problem, especially when you have a lot of innocent Ukrainians dying, essentially at the hands of a CEO who's trying to help out the other side. So I found that infuriating. I know that Musk was saying that it was limited, the Starlink was limited in Crimea or something like that. But that being said, over the last few months, you've heard that, you know, Musk has been saying that the Ukrainians will be getting Starlink service for free. They need to pay more than the United States government has to pay him to make sure Starlink's working. It's just, they're getting strong-armed, and it's a shame that Ukraine has to rely on Starlink. And it also worries me that we're getting a lot of comments from government officials that we held back certain weaponry because they didn't want to infuriate the Russians, and perhaps that they would go farther. Well, every time we've given them something, Russia's said something, but they haven't gone over the red line. And I'm just in the opinion right now that you have to give them pretty much what they need. Now, I understand that you can't just train somebody to fly an F-16 in 3 months. It takes years. But I don't think we should worry so much about a red line with Russia. I don't think Russia really wants to go to war with NATO unless they have some support of China. Because they can't go nuclear. That's it. They do that. And they can't defeat NATO. So really, in a certain sense, they're backed into a corner. But to get help from Elon Musk, everything I say is my opinion here, folks. By the way, for those who are new to this channel, I know every once in a while we get some new viewers. This is Divided We Stand. We have a Facebook group page called Divided We Stand. If you're interested in becoming a member, stop on by on Facebook. We don't look for anything. We're not monetized on Facebook, and we certainly aren't monetized here on Divided We Stand. We simply are trying to commiserate, voice our opinions, share information, and that's that. So we would appreciate that you would subscribe and become part of a team here. It's a small team, very small team, but yeah. All right, let's look at a few comments before I sign off. I want to thank Dave for making it to the show tonight. I heard a rumor that Musk was going to go to Mars and never come back. I hope that's true. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, he won't be going. He'll test it out on somebody else's body first, and then he'll go. You know what I mean? That's the kind of person that he is. He'll test it out on somebody first, and then they know it works. They'll go. I would agree with you. At least no one will step on Mars alive. It certainly is a new Cold War. It's funny, Veg, we have not only a Cold War with Russia, We have a Cold War in the United States. And lo and behold, the other side, the red states, are generally in support of Russia. I am their enemy. You are their enemy. I mean, it's a very, very difficult show tonight in that sense. I mean, just everything's depressing. And then think if you are a transgender person, what you have to go through. I cannot imagine it. It used to be homosexuals had to go through. I mean, to some extent, they're still going through today, but years back, we know what they went through. But transgender, I mean, they're doing everything to crucify those people. Yeah, I heard that too, silly. Yeah. Nasty missiles too, Ugh. Everything's getting there faster, you know what I mean? It's really ugly. Well, there you go. 100%. Saudi Arabia. They have an evil, evil leader. And in a certain sense, the people there suffer. They're a one-trick pony. And they are worried. The oil won't last forever, and even if it did, alternative fuels are going to eat into their profits. Yeah, they're a big problem. Big problem. Musk's blotchy red face says he's in poor health. Very insecure man. Upset with his trans daughter. We've been counting on these evil people to have bad health. It's almost kind of like our faith is that we are hoping that these people get sick. I mean, I've always hoped that the fast food would finally get to Trump. And I suppose there's a certain part of me, I don't want to see natural disasters. But there's a certain part of me when you have these climate catastrophe related events that there's a certain I told you so mentality that I have. But you can't bank on those things. This is bigger than any of that. I read the story. Morons. This is rain. Herd mentality. Hydrosonic missiles prove that the U.S. is the greatest country in the world and the smartest people ever. Right? They're frightening missiles. Quite frankly, not that the other ones are any better. And I know that the interballistic missiles are hypersonic, but the planet size is finite. And then these missiles get faster and faster and faster. And then if you're on the other end of them, it's... The Ukrainians are the ones, the people living in the apartments get hit by one of these missiles. Luckily, they've determined a way to kind of knock some of them out. But it's ugly. I'm having heart surgery Tuesday. Good luck, Jeff. Good luck. Frightening. Only the good ones die young, it seems. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just that we're overly contemplative of that faith that something bad will happen to evil people. You know, people have this, well, God, can't you please do this? You know, and sometimes some people pay the price. But you're right. Diseases don't know the difference between a good person and a bad person. Well, they live a lot longer than I'd like them to live. I know it's a horrible thing to say, but they create evil. I mean, Hitler had to be killed one way or another. The German army had to be killed one way or another. I know thou shalt not kill. I know that idea. I have the basic understanding of do no harm. That kind of covers it all. But if these people don't understand, I mean, they're no good. You know, because we don't take the law into our own hands. So we go into this psychological mode. Why can't he just choke on that cheeseburger? It's because we're law-abiding that's the right thing to do. If you're going to think of something, you just think of it. It doesn't work. It's like trying to think away a disease. It doesn't work. Yeah. I'd see Mar-a-Lago underwater. Yeah. But you know what? The type of guy that Trump is, he, get some FEMA bucks and get 3 times what it's worth. And just move it inland another 5 miles. But yeah, it would be nice to see Mar-a-Lago just, yeah. China, Russia, and Korea went with the hypersonic instead of the aircraft carriers, and their systems have failed. That's why Korea brought out submarine this week. Facade. He actually called them hydrosonic missiles. 4 out of 5 dentists recommend hydrosonic. Did I call them hydrosonic? Hypersonic? I don't know. Or was that Trump? I don't know. Did I say hydrosonic? Hydrosonic. It's made out of water. It's almost a mistake I'd like to make. Yeah, good luck to Jeff. Gary, you know all about heart operations, of course. Dave knows. It's like Heart Operation University here. Yeah, wishing people good health. Jeff, hope that you'll be fine. Maybe you can be able to be on the show next week. Right. Well, that's about it for tonight, folks. I think I covered all the comments, or at least most of them. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Again, if you're new to this channel, it's Divided We Stand. Please subscribe. We'll be on next week, and be on the lookout for the iGeneralist channel on YouTube and the Reality Report on Facebook. Paul and I will probably be doing a video pretty soon. It's been a couple weeks. We don't touch on the same topics, not necessarily political, but I'll post something when I get in touch with Paul, and then we'll go from there. So, look, it's great talking with everybody on this Saturday night. Good luck to Jeff. Oh, not me. All right, Bella, that's fine. But good luck to Jeff. All right. Good luck to Jeff, and hope he's a great doctor, whatnot. And thank you, all of you. Get all that tension out of me. You're really helping me. I'm not helping you. You're helping me. I'm the one that's getting therapy by doing this. Can you give a link to the channel? Yeah, I guess I can, can't I? Let me see if I can dig it up. Let me switch here and give you a link. Okay, let's see. All right, I'll put that in there. That is the iGeneralist channel. Hopefully that'll work. Yeah. So, thanks everybody. And by the way, I did watch Veg's video, Vegematic Deluxe. Great video this week. So, I would suggest you go over to Vegematic Deluxe's channel and check out that video. It's about 15 minutes or so. Great video. And you'll enjoy it, as always. So, thanks to everybody. See you, Epi from Scotland. Good to see you. Again, I think it's amazing that you show up at such an hour. It's really, it means something. Bella, everybody. Gary, Joey. So I'm going to sign off. And hopefully we'll have a next week. And that hurricane will be gone. I don't think it's going to hit Mar-a-Lago. But then again, other people are innocent there. I mean, if it has to hit somewhere, you know what I mean? Thanks, Silly. Yeah. All right, Veg. Oh, God. Yeah, Jeff, I don't envy you. All right. Jeff, hope to see your avatar next week. If not in 2 weeks. All right? Be well. And get some sleep tonight.